The next speaker I'm going to introduce briefly, his name is Peter Ketcham. He is a former employee of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And I'll just give you a very brief background. In August of this year, I, along with a few other authors, 2 engineers and a physicist, many of them you may know, Stephen Jones, Robert Correll, and Tony Zambodi, published an article in the magazine of the European Physical Society. It's called Europhysics News, and this came out in August. It was called 15 years later on the physics of high-rise building collapses. And this article ended up being viewed now more than 350,000 times, gained a lot of traction, and a lot of controversy was generated from it. As a result of that controversy, the editors of Europhysics News posted a statement kind of explaining their position and inviting any letters to the editor. And so a month or 2 later, when the next issue of the magazine was published, in the magazine was a letter from Peter Ketcham, this former employee of NIST. And in this letter, as he explains, he did not work on the World Trade Center investigation. And recently this year, he started looking into it and very quickly came to the conclusion that the NIST investigation, I'm just going to put it softly for now and I'll let him fill in the blank, but was not done properly and flew in the face of everything that he knew and his experience of working at NIST. And so I'm going to hand it over to him, and I just want to say that we are very grateful that he has chosen to speak out, and we view this as one step forward, and we hope that, I'm confident that he's going to be a very powerful voice for this pursuit of truth. And so here we go. Peter, thank you very much.
First, I would like to thank architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth for their generosity in bringing me here today. And I would especially like to mention and thank Ted Walter for his intelligence, competence, ability, talent, and commitment. And Ted and I have communicated a fair amount recently, and I could not ask for a better person to work with. Second, I want to say that my thoughts today are my thoughts, and I accept full responsibility for them. As Ted mentioned, I was a member of the NIST technical staff during the period 1997 to 2011. I initially joined the High Performance Systems and Services Division and later became a member of what was, at the time, the Mathematical and Computational Sciences Division of the Information Technology Laboratory. My fellow NIST employees were among the finest and most intelligent people with whom I have ever worked. I did not contribute to the NIST World Trade Center investigation or reports, but I do recognize the names of many who did contribute, and I had some degree of contact or involvement, even if only minimal, with a few of those contributors. A few months ago, based on a conversation with a friend who has no connection to NIST, I began to read some of those NIST World Trade Center reports, including NIST NC Star 1 and NC Star 1A. As I watched several documentaries contradicting the NIST reports and presenting very lucid arguments for controlled demolition, I quickly became furious. First, I was furious with myself. How could I have worked at NIST all those years and not have noticed this before? Second, I was furious with NIST. The NIST I knew was intellectually open, non-defensive, willing to consider competing explanations, and enthusiastic about presenting the details of its research to any interested party. The more I investigated, the more apparent it became that NIST had reached a predetermined conclusion that refused, avoided, and dismissed the evidence. Among the most egregious examples is the explanation for the collapse of World Trade Center 7 as a Rube Goldberg sequence of unlikely events culminating in the almost symmetrical collapse of a steel frame building into its own footprint at freefall acceleration. I believe that NIST is one of the crown jewels of the US federal government and an organization of staggering brilliance. But with respect to the World Trade Center investigation, I think that something went very wrong. I don't know what, but something. I could list all the reasons why the NIST World Trade Center reports don't add up, but others have already done so in extensive detail, and there is little that I could add. What I can do, however, is express some thoughts based on common sense, intuition, and experience drawn from my years at NIST. There are 5 points I'd like to mention. First, in my opinion, NIST is not fooling us anymore. NIST has painted itself into a corner while the walls of evidence and reason close in. One need only read the Europhysics News article and NIST's response to see that. My understanding is that police detectives use the term guilty demeanor to describe the dodging and weaving of a guilty party that desperately claims innocence. One does not need any technical background to see the display of guilty demeanor in the various NIST presentations regarding the World Trade Center investigation and reports. This is especially true of the investigation leaders, who repeatedly evade, dismiss, and obfuscate their way through incomplete and nonsensical explanations. It is not my intention to attack these individuals in making my point, as they may in fact have been under duress. But if the NIST World Trade Center investigation and reports prove false, then they are culpable nonetheless. Second, national security concerns are their own worst enemy. The excuse has worn thin that evidence or information must be withheld due to national security concerns. The irony is that the secretive cloak of national security has itself become a serious threat to our pursuit of happiness with the corruption and dishonesty that it breeds. If NIST truly believes in the veracity of its investigation, then it should openly share all evidence, data, models, computations, and other relevant information unless very specific and compelling reasons are otherwise provided. National security concerns and public safety concerns do not stand in isolation. They participate in a balance with accountability. Third, gingerly approaching the water and dipping in a toe does not constitute a swim in the ocean. In its reports, NIST makes a great show of copious details leading to collapse initiation, and then stops short just when it becomes interesting. The remainder of the explanation is a perfunctory statement that building collapse is inevitable and obvious. It is easy to see through this tactic as an evasion of prickly arguments and an avoidance of inconvenient evidence. Fourth, in response to any challenges, NIST typically provides curt explanations from its public affairs office. I was at NIST for 14 years, and I saw how this game was played. The strategy is to stand as an impervious monolith, while also tightly controlling communications. There were many contributors to the NIST World Trade Center investigation. Why not let them openly answer questions in their own voice with the depth of knowledge and level of detail that follows from the nuts and bolts of their research? If the NIST investigation and reports are sincere and genuine, then there is nothing to fear and nothing to hide. Fifth, honesty sooner is better than regret later. Awareness is growing of the disconnect between the NIST World Trade Center reports and logical reasoning. The recent Europhysics news article is a good example. Due to the nature of communication in our current world, that awareness may increase approximately exponentially. Why not NIST blow the whistle on itself now, while there is still time? The wounds of 9/11 have remained unhealed for too long. Those wounds are now festering, rotting, and infected. When the physical body is wounded, the first step is to wash out those wounds with hot soapy water. The process is painful, but the pain does not last, and the worst of it occurs at the start. Truth is the hot and soapy water with which we wash out the wounds of 9/11. With respect to the World Trade Center investigation, the official narrative of 9/11 has begun to unravel, and that unraveling may accelerate. One need only look at recent events, such as the appearance of the Europhysics news article, to see that unraveling in action. As a result, there may be a sequence of painful revelations. We may find that the United States federal government may not be quite the benevolent protector that we thought it was. But the wounds of 9/11 are unlikely to heal amid lies, deception, and misinformation. That is why truth is so important. Finally, I would like to respectfully say and suggest to you that your feelings are not the truth. Your feelings are important and beautiful, but your feelings only tell you how you feel, not what is true. And as I talk to a variety of people about 9/11 and the official narrative, I see in some cases a great deal of difficulty to consider or even accept some of the darker possibilities behind what has happened. And feelings are often a large part of that. So I'm simply saying to consider that although your feelings are important and wonderful and should be respected, that your feelings are not the truth. And finally, I would like to simply summarize by saying, the truth is where our healing lies. Thank you.